Hello. Today in our Ask Me AnyFin session, our guest is Simon Farmilo from Capify. Simon is also a commentator in the FinTech space, and today we would like to talk with him about open banking. Hello.
Hi, Lucas. Good to be here. Thanks.
Thanks. So let's start from a very general question. I would like to know your opinion about is open banking more a revolution or an evolution in the financial space?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in theory, I think it's a revolution, in my opinion. And I say in theory because fintechs have been using screen scraping for some time. So in actual practicality, I think open banking is then more an evolution of something that has been done, but it's a little bit more formalized in this day and age. And I think since the existence of the emergence of fintech, it's really been fintechs and the banks fighting over product market share. So with open banking, that now allows fintechs to access data that banks have been holding really since computers were invented. So, you know, up to this point, well, still to this point, is banks do rely on the principle of safeguarding your money and your data. So that's why, in theory, I do call it a revolution, because it's the first time in history where the giant walls of the banks have come down in a way, and that's only really been possible through regulation that initially came out in 2016 in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So, as I understand, one of the main goals of implementing open banking was to bring some more competitiveness to the market, and allow fintechs to grow and be more competitive comparing to already existing financial institutions. So, what do you think? Is this goal already achieved?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's already achieved. I think certainly so far the innovation has been quite substantial already to date, and we're still fairly young into it. But even in my industry, where customers are now experiencing a much more seamless and faster experience in the lending in the lending space. Before open banking, customers essentially had to upload manual bank statements and hope that either OCR technology, which could sort of read the statements, or someone in underwriting could actually read them and make sense of all the months in the right order and things like that. So I think now obviously customers just connect their bank, and a lender can make credit decisions through standardizing that banking data that's coming in, and obviously doing the number crunching, the algorithms to make faster decisions. So I think that's really the innovation, the competitiveness, because banks are very, for a long time they're very good at rolling out the red carpet for corporates and companies that can make a difference to their profit line. I think what banks do struggle to service is the smaller end of the town, the SMEs. It's very hard to sort of scale that profitably, or assign enough bankers to be able to look after them, especially when you don't have technology. So I think in the subprime sector, alternative business lending, the space that I'm in, is certainly a good example of how open banking is driving more competition, innovation. Having said that, though, I think we're still a long way, to go in terms of the reliability of open banking. It's still got some growing up to do. There's still teething issues with banks where banks are only sort of providing a certain amount of data that's in current accounts. I think they're sort of extending to savings accounts now and others, but mortgages, all that sort of stuff is sort of not readily available. Some of that is changing, and then you've also got the dreaded 90-day expiry rule where users have to reconnect every 90 days. So things like that are certainly teething issues, but I think so far it's certainly done a lot of good.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great. So yeah, so in theory, we have two types of, let's say, businesses and people that take benefit from open banking, because naturally, fintechs are using this solution to bring new products to the market. Customers have more products, more capabilities to on the financial market, and also to use their data. So do you see any other beneficiary of this change other than those two?
Yeah, well, I think it really does come down to the three sort of major players, which is obviously the consumer, the fintech, the banks. I think it's very interesting. I think economy as a whole, innovation is good. I think it drives the economy forward. I think that's where the regulators can actually come in and make a good bit of difference. So I think first and foremost, the consumers are the winners at the end of the day. I think it's allowed a whole variety of ecosystem come forward around open banking. The way fintechs can standardize the open banking data and actually speed up experience, I think is a great thing. And lending, as I mentioned, that's happening. Payment solutions, I think, is a huge opportunity, and that's already a lot is happening in that space. And it's actually allowing consumers cheaper options to move their money around rather than using traditional card payment rails that can be more expensive. And then I think the second winner is really fintechs who are able to make a profit off these new innovative products. I think it's a natural thing when a major event like open banking can happen. You think about Amazon, they actually started, I think there's about 300,000 new companies that have been formed around the world off the back of Amazon, and probably more than that. So that's just one example of something big that happens. Obviously, that was home delivery and being able to order online. That spurred a lot of innovation and new business opportunities. So fintechs are sort of same with open banking in that example, where they've sort of clustered around this ecosystem and being able to create new things and work off the back of it. So I think it's great for them. I think banks are still probably trying to really work out the ROI at the moment. They've sort of the original, what they call CMA 9 cohort of banks that was sort of forced to open up. I think it was a fairly expensive exercise. I think the ones that are working to create their own ecosystem, and there's some examples where they're actually pulling in fintechs that are doing a better job than they are with their own data, and actually bring them in to help service their customers. I think they're the ones that will also win. So it's about using that. I think there's just so many opportunities that are coming through very soon in the likes of open finance, where you start to include insurances, pensions, mortgages, investments. I think that's going to really be good for the economy and mainly consumers.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. So let's then talk about what Capify is doing in open banking, or with open banking. So yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about how do you use it, and how critical it is in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So Capify, first and foremost, for those who don't know who we are, we're an alternative lender to small and medium businesses, and we do same-day funding, and it's really a way for to help businesses that would typically struggle using banks to come through and obviously get easy and quick access to finance. So that's really what we provide, and we do that well. So it's important to note, I think, with credit writing is made up of two important elements: affordability, and that can someone afford to repay their loan, first and foremost, and creditworthiness, is someone actually likely to repay. And that, instantly open banking provides a benefit there, because we're able to actually see, a very holistic picture of a customer, and those two important criteria sort of, we can get those insights if we're using that data correctly. So you can get someone with maybe lower income that pays their bills, and someone on higher income that doesn't pay their bills, and that's one insight you can actually pull in from that data. It obviously, for us, it speeds up the credit decision. It gives us those insights. We can obviously price the risk more accurately. Obviously, that's a great benefit to customers, because we're obviously providing a price that is fair according to their credit worthiness, and that's responsible as well. What we also do as part of our experiences, because we do like to talk to our customers, usually our average deal size is around 50,000. So business owners do like to talk to someone during that process, just to understand a bit more. So we have a local-based call centre that handles that, but we also preempt open banking. So we actually introduce it as a step when they're on the phone, and we certainly see a much better uptake as part of that. So open banking, that's sort of how we use it. It's very powerful, and it's just been great for us as a business, also on profitability side, because it does lower costs as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So do you have a personal experience with open banking, from the customer perspective in some products?
Yeah, certainly I do. When I was actually working for an alternative lender in Australia, we were doing screen scraping, which that is obviously, for people that don't know, it's essentially asking customers to provide you with their bank login details through a third party, and an automated system will go in there and actually pull the data out. So it's not an integration. It's basically, you need to sort of surrender your login details. So obviously there's a few issues with that, but it was obviously okay to do by the industry as well. So that was sort of my first taste of it in a sense. But when I actually came to London 3 years ago, the UK was much further ahead than Australia, thanks to PSD2. So the first FinTech I actually worked for here had open banking, and that was provided through a third-party service. Even 3 years ago, however, it wasn't terribly reliable. We had constant connection issues. The reliability downtime was quite a factor, and I think, especially as a fintech, you really want to have great customer reviews, Trustpilot scores, all that sort of stuff. So even though it might not be your fault, it might be one of the big banks just having a server error or something like that. It is your fault. So it's from the customer's point of view. So what we actually did is actually switch our third party open banking provider, which was quite a tough exercise to re-standardize everything, but we got it back to a much better place. We put the open banking, we were an app, so customers downloaded us on the store, the app store, and then as part of their onboarding, they would actually connect to open banking. Now that was a hugely important step for us. It was obviously a step where we saw the biggest drop off in our funnel. And so we did a lot of work about how to encourage trust and motivate customers to go through that journey. We saw a massive change when banks allowed their own mobile apps to approve open banking connections. So rather than a customer trying to remember what the actual bank login was, maybe they've been using an app for 2 years and they haven't logged in online for so long. But it actually allowed this new implementation allowed customers to actually approve it via in their app, and we just saw a massive uplift there. And then obviously at Capify now, open banking is an integral part of our operation, and I can just see on both sides, the business side, but also obviously on the customer side, how it is making a difference. So yeah, I've sort of been around the original screen scraping, the consumer side, and now on the business side. So yeah, it's been very interesting.
Yeah, so you mentioned a very important aspect of open banking, which is, what are the potential, issues, when it comes to the adaptation. Uh, so you mentioned reliability, especially at the beginning of, of this market, let's say. You mentioned trust. You mentioned customer or user experience. Yeah, so those are the elements that can like lower the final adoption of open banking solutions, for sure. So what do you think currently, especially in the UK, with the current state of the open banking solutions, what do you think is the biggest challenge when it comes to the adoption from the customer perspective or from the business perspective as well?
Yeah, I think your banking data is a very private thing. It's something I wouldn't want to show to sort of anyone, because it is sort of your personal life, and it's your personal choices that you make, on a day-to-day basis, where to shop and what subscriptions you have, and how much money you earn, and all that sort of stuff. So it's a real insight, quite a personal insight into someone. So I think, one of the issues, it does come down to trust. And I think that's really important for consumers. So I think, first and foremost, there needs to be, increased education around it. What are actually the benefits of open banking for customers? I think being open and transparent about how personal data is used, particularly of third parties, is really important. I think for customers to be able to revoke permissions is really important. So, you sort of think about all these subscriptions you might have out there in the world. I can't even think of all the subscriptions I've got, and might maybe be quite scary if I actually saw them on a list and said, actually, I'm still paying for that or this. So I think being able to have full visibility of that and revoke permissions, who's actually seeing your data, is really important. And I think, just even though people don't read fine print, I think it's good for customers, businesses to understand how the data sharing is actually being used in an ethical way, who's seeing the data in the company, and how they are actually using that data. Is anyone else sort of in the picture? And I think it's a good exercise for businesses to be aware of that and be responsible. Obviously the regulation is important. It needs to allow innovation, obviously not be restrictive, but protect consumers. And I think, just complaints process, like everything. I think being able to, if there are issues and you need to complain and you're not getting anywhere, who at the moment do you actually go to as a consumer to complain about open banking? It's that needs to be really clear. So I think that would really go a long way with trust. But having said that, I think is particularly in the open banking payment side, which is one of the really exciting areas. I think there is massive growth. I was having a look at some data yesterday, and you think back in 2018 there were around 320,000 open banking payments made. In 2020 last year there was 4 million. And back in just February this year alone, there was already 1 million in that 1 month. So there are, it is sort of this tipping scale. I think that's gonna take off. But I think the sort of regulation and the transparency needs to keep up with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before we end, I would like to ask you about maybe some kind of a vision of the future. Of how this open finance in general could look. You said at the beginning that open banking is kind of a revolution, and this revolution is changing the whole industry, I would say, and the products offering, the customer experience, and probably this is only the beginning of the journey on how this will be evolving in the future. So let's say in 10 years, what you would see, as a potential consequence of going into this direction of opening the data, opening the companies, opening in this case specifically financial data to others?
Yeah, 10 years. I think 10 years is a long time, and as you and I know that in fintech there's so much can happen. I think what was part of that is a really good question, because a lot of it is the unknown. What we haven't seen yet that open banking could actually do. I think one of the the massive areas that we're already seeing is two big opportunities. I think within what's called variable recurring payments, and instant buy now pay later. So open banking payments as an infrastructure rail is potentially much more programmable and straightforward than existing card rails, and cheaper. So I think, and that really comes down to the ability to fetch a user's account history with a payment, which is quite an exciting idea. So variable recurring payments, first off, are a new way of making payments via bank APIs, as opposed to sort of doing a direct debit or a card payment. And what that actually allows you to do is actually control amounts that are coming out of your bank account and have visibility, set limits. It also does something called sweeping as well. So normally I will get a ping on my Monzo account that Netflix have tried my account and I forgot to top up my current account, so therefore the direct debits to all that goes with it. So what sweeping actually does is it would take all of my accounts and go, right, there's not enough money in there for this payment that's coming through right now. Boom, it basically pulls the money and then makes that payment. So there's a lot of opportunity there with sweeping. So if you've got an overdraft, you could have an app, FinTech app, that connects in and would actually move your money around, so you're saving money on interest on your overdraft and things like that. So there's a lot that's going into what these called VRPs idea. One click underwriting for buy now pay later is quite an exciting idea as well. So obviously buy now pay later is huge. It's massive. It's huge for merchants, huge for consumers. But you can imagine you go into your checkout and you, at the moment, I think it's getting a little bit crazy with, you've got maybe 6 buy now pay later providers. Each of them have got their own sort of application journey that you have to sort of go through. It can be quite overwhelming. You can just imagine if you click on one of them, connect up your bank, and then they give you an instant decision if you're approved for your purchase or not. That's what open banking can do very quickly. So that's also exciting. And I think coming back to your 10-year question, I think what could be the real exciting thing here is the crypto element. At the moment, obviously, crypto wallets, etc., are funded through existing sort of card rails. What open banking could be is actually that bridge between crypto and traditional finance, where you're getting sort of all the data from open banking plus the crypto wallet data all in one financial picture that then you can also make decisions on. So I think it could be that real bridge between those two two big worlds in the next 10 years. So I think it's very exciting. But I think we'll be watching it and seeing a lot of great innovation come about.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Simon, for a meeting, and it was a pleasure to talk to you. I hope we will talk sooner than in 10 years.